Welcome back, everybody, to Not Two Old Timers. I'm Brian,
And I'm Corey.
and we are not two old timers sitting around telling stories and talking about things. So, what's going on, Corey?
Hey, buddy. Hey, before we start, do you have a fan in the background?
No, not that I'm aware
Okay,
of.
that's all right. I hear rumbling. It's like a highway, but it's probably nothing.
Well, I
It's just,
again, I am in a large room.
yeah. Oh, well, that's all right. Oh, my goodness. It's been a while, hasn't it?
It has.
It's
There's
been,
been
it's been too long. Life has it's taken
a
me on an
drastic turn.
adventure. It's taken me on an adventure lately. Yeah. But I'm blessed. I'm blessed here to be a part of it today. So it's fantastic.
Good, good. Well, I'm glad to see you. We haven't even personally seen each other in a while.
In over a month.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
But I'm
goodness.
glad to be back here and doing this.
Yeah, this is fun.
Okay, shall we jump right in?
Yeah, you've got a great topic. You got a big topic picked out.
Yeah, today I think we need to talk about social media use in the military
Hmm.
and where it was in my generation, where it was in your generation, and how we see it now. And again, just so everybody knows, this is just our experiences and our opinions. We're both retired, so we're not privy to the ins and outs of the current active duty lifestyle, but from an outsider's perspective looking in, I think that I'd like to discuss it. What do you think?
I like that. Yeah, you know, social media is one of those things that I got to experience while I was active duty come about. It was a thing, right? Because I was part of the generation where I was still young, whatever. When I was in my early 20s when MySpace was a thing. You could pick your profile song and everything, and the MySpace went away, and the Facebook evolution came around, and that became what it is today. This huge meta platform thing with all kinds of utility to it. Um, but man, I've got so many good stories and bad stories with military interactions of social media.
Yeah, I can
where
imagine.
where I have a very personal like diehard feelings of the improper usage through military functions and operations of social media, you know.
Yeah. All
But
right. Well.
hit us up, man. What do you got,
Okay.
old
Well,
man?
kind of in that vein that you were talking about just now. You log into any social media platform. Um, Specifically Facebook for me because I don't really use anything else. And to be honest with you, I don't really use Facebook all that often, just to keep in touch with friends and family. But I don't ever post anything, and my profile's private. And I mean, you've seen my profile; it's pretty bleak. But um, well, let's just start back in my time frame. So I'm the same. I was around when MySpace first came out, which was basically the first massive social media platform, which was eventually dethroned by Facebook. But in all my time of active duty, social media was one of those things where you just didn't you weren't allowed to use it at work. There was no, mind you, smartphones didn't come out until the latter half of almost to the end of my my term, but Facebook and all that was around prior to, the iPhone or anything like that. And but you weren't allowed to do anything. You weren't allowed to log in on Facebook on your work computer or anything like that. That was a big no no. It was a security thing, Not to mention, you know, eh, you're supposed to be doing a job, and eh, the the thinking during my time frame was that social media was prejudicial to good order. Basically, it was a way of distracting you from what you were supposed to be doing on the day to day. So, we had
I don't
zero.
think that's untrue to today. I think that statement still holds the exact same amount of weight
Oh,
today.
I agree, and that's kind of the reason I wanted to talk about it was,
Yeah.
we see it's just it's as you mentioned prior to the starting of the recording, there is some positive value in having in the military overall having an investment in social media. Yeah, there is. I really believe that with recruiting or retention or all these other things. But you see
In the grand
young,
scheme of things, it is media,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
and it's
exactly, and
mass and it's mass media
yeah,
now,
and
especially.
yeah, and this generation kind of lives in that sphere,
Mhm.
that mass media sphere where you and I, me specifically, but I know partially you as well, that wasn't really a thing, and no time when I was active duty was ever, you know, doing anything on personal on a work computer authorized. You couldn't even check your personal email. You get in
Right,
there, you check your work email and things like that. Your personal email was done on your own time when you got home.
right.
Um, but now I hear all the time about these young airmen having access to Facebook and TikTok and all this other stuff on, well, maybe not so much TikTok these days, but Facebook specifically,
TikTok too,
having
yeah.
access on their work computer, and it
Oh,
just
I
blows
don't know
my
about
mind.
that.
What's that?
If not on their work computer, everybody's got a smartphone now. Everyone has a phone, a media
Yeah,
device with them
yeah,
at the ready. So it
yeah.
doesn't even have to be on the work computer at this point.
Well, and I think you were in that transitional space from me to you to now. What's your take on the transitional time frame?
Oh, it's the transition from a no media into the work environment into a plethora of media into the work environment. Nowadays, let's start at where we are now, backtrack a little bit, right? Nowadays, we have um a massive amount of we'll stick with active duty military members who quite obviously during the duty day are posting their little TikTok dances and whatnot, and distracting themselves from the duties at hand, from the actual missions. And I think that's been a problem for a very long time. It's just never been corrected. There's never been a correction to it from early on to set the actual how we function. And that is steamrolled and perpetuated a snowball effect down the mountain, right? To what it is today, to where we have dedicated Facebook pages specifically for reposting the TikTok videos of active duty military members during their shift, right? But you know, if we backtrack just a little bit before then, there was a very high standard as to military members and their social media activity being separate from their actual military duty. Not their I'm on work duty hours duty, but actually like you don't put information about you being in the military on your social media. You don't put pictures of you in uniform, right? Like there's zero connection to tie you and your um personal thoughts to military activities, right? And
Yeah,
that's
to
just
the
it was a
uniform.
separation.
Yeah,
It's a professional separation, right?
right.
It's a code of conduct separation, and that largely has been completely eradicated. Where people now, it's almost like not there's no like about it. It is um, an emphasis on put more information out and show the world what we have in a moment's notice, in a heartbeat. God forbid, you got an airplane crash. I've seen this. And I know about an airplane crash because I see it online
Yeah,
way, 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 way before there's any public release. And I'm like, oh shit. a fucking F-35 just crashed in Alaska. Within 30 seconds, I knew about it. I wasn't even in the military at that point in time, you know, I'm just connected with the community still, but I was like, "Fuck." A plane just went down, right? Lost power. Its VTOL lift stopped and it just came down, you know. But I mean, I'm getting off tangent a little bit. The social media and the workspace environment has become not problematic only in the ways of we're just posting stuff from the office itself, right? But problematic in the usage of it as an actual functional tool within the workspace, right? I remember a while ago, there was, it's probably still an app, I don't know, social media, Snapchat, right? And, one of my tech sergeants was in the office and he took a picture and sent it to one of our lower ranking individuals from the office. I don't know what Snapchat is. I still don't. I didn't then, I still don't, and I don't care, right? But what he was doing was he was taking a picture of everything we had going on in the office environment, right? The magnet board with the information of every operation that we were having. Not secret information, right? But all that information, dude, and he was just putting it out there on some fucking, God forbid, Chinese application, right? And putting it out there into the world. And dude, I fucking tore into him. And he was just like, I don't see what the issue is with me sending this picture to another individual that works within the office. And I fucking lost it when he said that, because I said that's the actual issue. The problem is you don't see where that is problematic, right? And I was fucking pissed. But it was setting a standard like, hey man, you're at work, stop fucking around, right? And that's the way I see it. I see social media largely as fucking around.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's little objective to it in the duty function mindset, right? Um,
Well, yeah.
but
Yeah. I agree.
but as a tool, right? We had gotten ourselves into a place before I separated several years, and I fought against it and fought against it and fought against it and fought against it. Several years before I separated, we had dug ourselves into a rut. And it's possible that this was, you know, just a small fragment of the military. I highly doubt that it was, that I was privy to. Um, but we relied on social media for mass communications to our troops. So we would put out the information on like chat groups, Facebook Messenger chat groups. And the only way for you to get that information was for you to have a social media page. So we were forcing, in a sense, all of our troops to have a Facebook page that was active, in use, that were plugged into 24/7, and we would push the information necessary out through that means. And I know that that wasn't necessary, because what did we do before we had that connection to the world 24/7, right? Or the connection to the troops 24/7. And I think I'll take this tangent. I'm gonna stew on this thought for a minute to kind of get it pieced together
Okay.
into a something that I can actually express without skipping around a lot. But we as supervisors, we as leaders, had a crux where we couldn't effectively communicate with our troops while they were on duty at work. And so we then had to, later on, when they were already released, have to bother them again, in a sense, right? Now I'm not saying you're off work and, you know, active duty military, you're on work 24/7. However, there's a point in time where you're not actively at work, right? Um, but leaders became ineffective and they used this as a crutch. Does that make sense? I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's why I said
Yeah.
I got to stew on this a little bit and kind of
Yeah, it
formulate it.
makes sense. Well, but to bring it back to my era, I remember being a young airman, and I had just moved downtown. I just moved out of the dorms. Didn't have a whole lot of money, and I was told by my supervisor right as I moved out, the first thing you need to do is buy a phone. like get a phone connected. This is a landline, not a cell phone,
Right,
landline.
right, right.
And I said, "Well, why? I don't need anybody to call you." And they were like, it is a mandatory requirement that you have a phone in your home because of the recall roster. I don't know
Yep.
if you've yeah, I know
This
you know
this
what a
was a
recall
requirement
roster
when
is.
I was so we talked about this a while ago with the recalls of your time in the dorms or the barracks going to the day room phone, which was a government landline.
Yeah. Yeah.
And anybody in that hall was obligated to pick that phone up whenever it rang, every single time it rang. Didn't matter
Yes.
who, somebody, right? But when you moved out of that environment, you were obligated to still be able to have a connection, i.e., a landline of your own.
Right.
Right. Right.
Yeah. But nowadays that's in with the advent of the cell phone, that's the landline's gone the way of the dodo bird, but
Mhm.
you know there to
That
kind of roll it
requirement is
into
still a thing. You need to be able to be contacted for recall
right,
purposes.
but
Right.
it no longer needs to be a phone call.
For
It can
recall
be a
purposes.
text message or a signal chat, or because the Marines here use Signal, so it
Signal
could
or
be
WhatsApp. WhatsApp was
yeah,
popular for a long time.
yeah. So, but to kind of to look at the evolution of that. So basically, prior to when the cell phones came out, and then they SMS came out, the text messages. It was like late 90s, early aughts over here in Japan, and it was like everybody was running around with those Nokia cell phones. But no, they only had like text capability. They never really used it for phone calls, but I remember
And that
you
was out
had
of
and this
convenience.
yeah, but the problem was is this is where the danger of those started
Mhm.
was you'd have people sitting on a launch crew with engines turning on C-130s at the time, and some idiot standing by chocks texting on his cell phone, not paying attention to the ground guy telling him to pull chocks. You got four engines turning, it's like, and he's just sitting there texting on his phone, not paying attention to anything. It's like, Jesus Christ, man. You know, you're in the middle of, and to your point, you're in the middle of actual work, and all you do, and you're already distracted, and it
Mhm.
has just continually gotten worse since then.
So
Uh,
the problem
with
the
the advent
problem
of the
isn't new. The problem isn't new.
no,
It's
no,
always been there,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
It's
with the
always been
technology,
there.
yeah,
Right. As soon as the technology became available, the issue with having that readily available technology has increased
right. Well,
with
and
the
then with
inventions.
that, yeah, with that technology, the the stimulus to um how do I want to put this? Well, I'm gonna put it in a professional manner. To fuck off, it's the idea that
To take a
hey,
Snapchat of your balls and send it to the
yeah,
expediter.
or like you alluded to earlier, dancing on TikTok, you know, and mind you, there are some great things. Facebook, and you and I have seen it, and we've seen the evolution of it as well. Where um, I don't know if I want to throw out the names, but there's a popular Air Force uh, site, personnel site on
Yeah,
Facebook.
I wasn't throwing out names,
Yeah,
but we're
I'm not
talking
gonna
about
throw
this
it.
probably talking about the
Yeah,
same site.
yeah.
Yeah.
And at the start of the evolution of that page, it was literally where people could pass on information about things that were critical to everybody in the Air Force, all the enlisted folks, and it was a very good page. It was, you really got some decent information from it. But now it's almost like it's evolved into this thing where people just are there to shit on everything, you
I
know.
think a large portion of that is not just the today's media bubble, but it's politics being directly involved with military operations as well. I think that politics have bled into the military, right? It used to be very strict. We don't give a fuck what your politics are. They don't belong here.
Yeah, it was very
Not
apolitical.
while you're in uniform,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And,
exactly.
and that does not happen. That does not happen today.
Well, I really think that, especially on the Air Force side, and mind you, this is coming from an old geezer, but I think that the Air Force decided to go down the path of um, social experimentation. Let's say that.
Gentler Air Force is what we
Yeah,
used to call it. We used to call
yeah,
it
where
softer, gentler
you
Air
know,
Force, where it was we could not hold people to the standards because of political reasons. The
well,
standards.
it wasn't even that. It was that they were changing the standards to meet the current social climate instead of, and as much as I
Yes.
think that the current trajectory, today's trajectory, is a little bit too too much of a turn. I think that it did need corrected. I think that the idea that the Air Force is a place to experiment with things, or the military in general, in a social setting, is not the case. The reasons they were standards was because it held people to a standard. You don't widen standards. It's a standard. Either you have it or you don't. And everybody, all this.
But how do you
The
apply
whole,
that? How do you apply that? I mean, we're talking social media and social bleed over into the military, which is going to happen because you constantly recruit younger and younger, and I mean the same, 18 to 29 or whatever, continuously recruiting, right? And so you're going to get a new fresh of societal function, right? That's going to
right.
continue to evolve and change over time. And so in a sense you do have to evolve and change the military operations. However, how do you do that without accelerating it to an absurd amount, right? And how do you do that to incorporate the way that the new generation, function, if they even function, right? Because we all know that a lot of people, especially in the past 10 years, have come into the military who are completely incapable of functioning, particularly as military members, a fighting force, right? And I've dealt with this. I've personally dealt with deployments where people break in deployment functions, both the ones who I thought weren't going to be the ones breaking. And I was very surprised. Holy shit, I can't believe he's the one that broke. But I also knew right off the bat, this individual, and this individual, they're going to break. We have to be extremely cautious with them because when they break, we need to recognize it immediately, right? And
Yeah.
and that's I can't imagine going into the environments that I did back in 2007, 2008, 2009, actually 2006, 7, 8, 9 that I did with the fighting force that we have today.
Yeah.
That'd be
Well,
that'd be rough. That'd be
imagine
rough.
it. Imagine it in the kickoff of Enduring Freedom in
Right.
2003, 2004.
Right.
Iraqi freedom. It's a different force, and it really is. And I get that there are some people that believe that.
That's a societal change in the generations, right? That's it. You're
Right.
talking about millennials coming in, and now you're having the Gen Z guys come in, and that's very Gen Alpha will soon come in,
Yeah.
and God
But
forbid, I don't even
yeah.
want to imagine that right now.
But to
Millennials
to
gonna be senior, getting ready to leave. Gen Z is going to be mid tier to senior, and then Gen Alpha is going to be the ones coming in doing
right.
everything. They're gonna be
Yeah.
they're gonna be the ones throwing fucking mortars through tubes. You know?
Yeah.
God damn.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
What and to roll it back into what I was saying with the social media is that the the Air Force specifically kind of adopted this idea that with the social change, they needed to incorporate more social media use and allow it to be more flexible, should I say?
Mhm. Yeah.
In the
Flexible
sense
is a
that you
good.
could do it in uniform and you could do it on duty, and
So I almost understand that perspective, right? As someone who does public speaking really well, I understand that
Who?
you have to meet
Wait,
the
who?
audience. Shut up. You have to meet the audience at their level, meaning you have to be able to quickly read who your audience is and figure out who your audience is and then meet them at their level. But when you're applying that very generally to the new generation and just assuming that 100% of the individuals in that generation operate on social media exactly the same way, a large percent, yes, maybe, but not all, right?
Yeah.
Since when is the military a large percent of the American population? It never has been. It never
Yeah,
will be,
exactly.
right?
Yeah.
And we are
Well, World
have
War
been
II.
the most selective individuals, employers of all of America for a reason. It's a fighting force. It's not a losing force. Hmm, I guess you can fight and lose, but that's not the objective behind it.
Yeah.
So I can understand, I can almost understand the idea and the argument, the discussion of we need to incorporate social media in the way that we operate to meet new recruits at their level and the way that they communicate. The problem is, you talked about doing a recall and having a phone. If in today's environment, we try to do a recall via phone numbers, num 10% of the individuals don't even have phone numbers anymore because they just operate everything off of Wi-Fi online stuff, right?
Yeah.
Um, but a greater amount, people don't answer numbers that they don't know. And so when you call someone's phone and that phone comes up as unknown, I'm guilty of this today. I've changed the way that I operate. If I get a number that I don't know, I don't answer it. Period.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
Well, I
who the
mean,
fuck's calling me? I don't give a fuck who, like,
with all
you're
the
not
spam
important
calls
for
and
me.
everything.
You're not important,
Yeah.
exact, and that's why. And that's why because there's been an
Yeah.
overload of spam calls and that has affected how we operate on the telephone is because of there's just so much spam calls. People ignore it. And so later on, we're like, hey, man, 16 hours. Why did it take me 16 hours and an individual to go physically find you for a recall? Oh, well,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
got the phone call, but I ignored it. Talk about pissing a master sergeant off, dude. I fucking, oh my God. Right. But I understood that.
Yeah. You
I
couldn't really hold
disagreed
it
with it.
against
I
them. Yeah.
disagreed with it, but I understood it. I understood the reasoning behind it, right? Because I was able to zoom the picture out. And so, you know, in that regards, you're almost forced to push notifications out via mass texts, group
Yeah.
chats,
Yeah.
WhatsApp. What's the hot one with the government today? The fucking everyone's got themselves their panties in a bunch because of this fucking
Signal.
Signal, that one. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
The signal, right? Like, okay, I get it, right? Like there's ways to communicate. And if they're somewhat secure, obviously Facebook Messenger is not secure. But I'll tell you what, we used it. We didn't discuss mission stuff. In fact, probably we did, I'm sure. We would discuss elements of the mission, aircraft such and such, report this, that,
Yeah. Yeah.
troubleshoot, broken, code 3 for
Right.
XYZ, whatever the case may be. Um, but that's how we operated. We kind of had been forced into operating on this communication level. But that communication level of having chat groups, once you have one chat group, you spawn this idea that there should be a second chat group because we want a chat group for the entire shop. Then we want a chat group for only the lower tier. Then we want a chat group for only the NCO tier. Then we want a chat group for the NCO and senior NCO tier. Then we want a chat group for the NCO or the senior NCO tier within that group or within that shop. Then we want a chat group that is all of the senior NCOs within a squadron. Then we
Yeah.
want a chat group that has the squadron senior NCOs with the commander and the first sergeant. Like go on and on and on. And you get
Yeah.
and it's too much. And suddenly you go, hey, what are you guys talking about? You're actively at work and you're going, what are you guys talking about? What is this crazy shit that you guys are talking about right now? How come I've never heard of this? Oh, well, we put it in the chat group last night. Oh, what fucking chat group? Obviously not one that I'm a part of, right? And it becomes
Yeah.
problematic. And then further that, why is this being discussed on a chat group outside of our duty hours versus our actual huddles, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we had individuals who were ineffective and in their leadership abilities couldn't manage their time effectively to lead their troops while they were actually at work, right? Um, and would have to push out, oh, by the ways,
Yeah. Yeah.
in the middle of the night sometimes. And I got wrapped up into that, and it would drive me nuts to the point to where I swear to God, my PTSD got worse because of the ding of Facebook Messenger on my phone. And I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding when I say that. I said swear to God,
Uh,
but I'm not fucking kidding with that. To this day, my phone is on silent, and I will accidentally sometimes hit a button and turn my notification um dings and shit on, and my phone will ding and my eye will fucking twitch, right? Like I can't I I can't do it. I can't do it. I'm
uh,
not like I swear to God. And so if I'm doing that, right? If I'm having that reaction as a senior NCO leading shit, imagine what my kids' reactions are when all they're trying to do is go home after working 12, 13, 14 hours of hard ass fucking labor. And all they want to do is eat some shitty ass dried fish from the fucking chow hall, go home, rub one out, and fall asleep. And I'm dinging their fucking phone, you know?
well, I'm, you know, my big thing with that whole rant that you just went on was the fact that you said that any of your troops did hard work. I'm just saying,
My
just
guys
saying.
weren't engine guys like you, dog.
Yeah, exactly. No, but you're right. You're right. In the back in the day, it was you dreaded if your phone rang after 9 p.m. because you knew it was work.
Well,
You knew for a fact it was work.
if your phone rang after 9 p.m., chances are you were headed back to the office for some
Yeah, yeah,
crazy ass shit.
yeah. And but
Not
it's
yeah.
nowadays it's like you said, your phone's dinging and you're waking up to check it, and it's just a coworker passing on something.
Some
Oh,
dumb shit
they
that could have
told me.
waited until morning.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah,
And it was
but
an ineffectiveness of leadership, and I pushed really, really, really hard against it, right? And so I left one unit several years, right? I was asked to go to this other unit because they had some individuals that were leaving the shop. They were in the middle of a deployment and they needed an anchor. And I said, all right, I'll go over there, but don't expect me to continue on in that squadron with the shenanigans that they're fucking doing. I'm gonna be a fucking agent of change when I walk over there. And they were all okay with it. And I walked over there, and throughout the entire structure of that squadron of that unit, I implemented changes as to how we operate effectively as leaders, so that our dudes could effectively operate under the management capabilities of aircraft maintenance, right? And one major aspect was that is don't fuck with the social medias, right? Stop with the messaging. Like, you have one group of all of us senior NCOs, and that's how we communicate. Don't misuse it. There's no bullshitting on there. That is for dissemination of information, not
yeah,
bitching,
yeah,
right? Right? And that's the way we kept it. And I was halfway successful with that, but that was a culture that I alone wasn't going to be able to eradicate,
yeah,
right? Culture doesn't change because of one person.
yeah. And see, I didn't have to worry about any of that. By the time I retired, social media was just coming about, and I mean everybody had cell phones. Um, but this was back in the day when you literally, when you walked in the door, you had to lock your cell phone in your locker. There was no cell phone on
Yeah,
the
I forgot
shop
about
floor.
that. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah. I
I mean
forgot
this was
about that.
back when when you were in uniform, no cell phone. Period.
No cell phone. A lot of it was because of like unknown EMF, right? Electromagnetic
Yeah,
radio frequency exposure.
well,
And I'm a
for
dude
us,
that
it was
that for me specifically dealing with explosives, that was
yeah,
always a
yeah,
hazard, right? And so you had to very much mind that. But you think we really did? Come on, dude.
yeah. Well, for us, it was not the distraction issue, but also a thought issue. You know, you drop your phone, piece of plastic pops off, flies in a motor somewhere. You know, it's one of those things where you just it was always no phones on the floor. So as soon
Yeah,
as you walked in, you put your phone in your locker. You
right,
got caught with it. You were going to see the boss. As simple as
right.
that. You know, you're talking. You know,
But now,
up
now,
until
or well, when I was separating, their phone is on top of their toolbox, playing fucking whatever shitty ass new music there's fucking playing. You know,
yeah. Well,
Jizzy Two
fuck.
Face.
I walk through the shop floors here where I'm working now, and people sitting around, even though there's work going on, sitting around looking at scrolling through their phone. You look by, and they're playing games on it, and it's just like, what the
Mm-hmm.
fuck, man? And that's again, to your point earlier, that's a failure of leadership. You know, if leadership isn't enforcing the policy, because there's a policy about no phone use while you're working,
Yeah, but
but
a policy that's like, if you're not enforcing it, it's not a policy.
that's what I'm saying.
That's
You
like
know,
a
that's
law that we don't follow. Like, there's laws. States have old fucking laws that say stupid shit like if you lock your horse up at a fucking on the stable at fucking whatever square, you're gonna go to jail for 2 days or some shit. We don't follow that, right? Still in the books.
yeah. But I mean, it ultimately in the military, you know what Jack Nicholson say? We follow rules or people die. You know what I mean? So it's one of those things where
I think there, and that comes down to the same piece of that. Fuck, I don't remember who it was. The general that was given a graduation speech, I think at West Point, and he went off on a tangent about, um, if you're gonna do anything throughout the day, get up in the morning and make your bed. That way, at the end of the day, two things happen. One, you've had at least one successful thing that you did today. You made your bed. And two, you have a nicely made bed after a hard, shitty day to get into and get some good sleep, right? And it comes
that
down
was
to,
I think that was Admiral McAllister. He
that
was a
sounds
Navy
correct.
SEAL that was in charge of U.S. SOCOM at the time.
That
He
sounds
said,
correct.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You get up, you
And
make your bed.
the idea behind it is how you do anything is how you do everything. If you do the little shit correct, if you can do the minute scaled operations correctly, then the larger scale operations will take care of themselves because you're automatically going to take care of it through the
Right.
smaller
Yeah.
aspects, right? And that goes, if our guys are unable to have simple enforcement of standards at that level, imagine what other enforcement of standards aren't being enforced. How
Yeah.
you do anything is how you do everything.
Yeah.
And that has been a, a problem with the military structure for a decade and a half.
Yeah. And I think that
People are afraid to jump someone's ass. I remember one day I was just driving around the local base here, right? I was still active duty, and I went to the post office, and I was driving back, and I see this young airman walking across the intersection. This is headphones still had cords at the day, right? And he had his little earbuds in with the cords hanging, just walking in uniform, bebopping across the intersection, dude. And I rolled down the window and I hung my entire body out my window. And mind you, I was in a minivan that was pimped out. I had airbags. I had bags on this fucking
I
minivan, so it was
remember.
lowered, big
Yeah.
old rims. It was fucking badass, badass fucking minivan. And here I am. I'm hanging out the fucking window, and I am chewing into this poor airman. I have no idea who the fuck he is, but it was an enforcement of standards, right? in the moment. And this poor kid locked up in the middle of the intersection, just stood there at attention, like the light turned green. And I was like, get the fuck out of the intersection. I tell you what though, he probably didn't walk around with his earphones in anymore. But he probably went to work and he goes, I don't know if I was wrong, but this guy yelled at me for having my earphones in it. Probably nobody had ever set that standard with him. How? Why? He wasn't new to the Air Force. He had gone through basic training. He had gone through his tech training. How did he hit the field in that condition? Right?
Well, and it begs the question also is maybe he knew, and as soon as you drove away, he said, "Fuck that guy," put his earphones
Fuck
back in, and
you.
he kept walking. You
Not
know,
not by the
because
reaction, but he could have. Yeah,
I
absolutely.
mean, I've seen that before where they just don't give a shit, and
Right.
that's the exception, not the rule. I'll grant that.
Correct.
There are amazing airmen and Marines out there, and it's the exceptions just drag everybody else down. But to bring it back to the original subject, we see it all the time now with the like security forces has a big problem right now of the airmen that are sitting at the guard shack turning on live. They're on like Instagram live or TikTok live or whatever, just recording their fucking day, while they're sitting at the guard shack. Well, it's like, motherfuckers, you guys are supposed to be guarding the base, you
Stay
know?
observant, right? They've got all
Yeah,
they've got like they got to recite shit when their fucking supervisors come in. They're like, "Hey, give me your mission statement or whatever that is. Give me your daily
yeah.
brief." You know.
But it's just, but instead of these people being punished for it, they're being, rewarded for it, you know,
I
whether
don't think
that's
they're being
monetarily
reward
through, well, no,
yeah,
monetarily through
clout.
Instagram or,
They're being
yeah,
rewarded through clout,
yeah.
right?
But
Just the
they
the
all,
thumbs and that's what they live for. That's what a
yeah,
lot of the newer generation live for. And that's driving a lot of mental health issues.
yeah,
I in fact, this is this is a total another thing. But there was an individual within my circle of individuals that I know out here who recently passed away. I don't know. Are you aware of this?
yeah, yeah. I heard the other day.
Okay. So he took his own life, and he had at one point in time been very, I'll say, influential on social media, but that all stopped. Right, and that was a large factor into his mental being when that stopped. Like, what do you do when you stop getting the hearts, the thumbs up, the likes, the all the the everything? And here we are on social media doing stuff, right?
Yeah, but
but
I
but
mean,
but we're not living for it, right?
right. I mean, as
All right.
as you could tell by our posting schedule.
I had a month and a half. Come on, dog. Where you been? Oh,
uh,
that's funny. Let me see here.
yeah,
Our last video a month ago. It says, okay, yeah.
yeah. Well, and
Uh,
and that's the thing. I think too many people tie their self-esteem to their value. And they need to get away from that. Your value is so much more than your self-esteem.
so that's a good point. Is a lot of people, particularly the young, have lived their life in a generation where social media has always been around them, right?
Yes.
And so their entire existence doesn't exist out in the world like you and I, where we go grocery shopping, we fill up our cars with gas. They might do all of that, but that's not where they exist. They exist at their online space. And so when you take that online space away from them, their actual existence, they don't know who they are
Yeah.
because they've always had to be something different. They've always had to pretend to be something else online. Social media influencers are notorious for it. They've got like that one clean spot in the house that they record in, or they go to an Airbnb and they record in, but their actual home life is shit. It's a disaster,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? They don't present that information. Um, but I want to go back because we started talking about social media largely and only up to this point in the negative context of social media with the military. If we look at media with the military, dude, do you remember the Marine in his dress blues and he slayed that dragon? Do you remember that commercial?
Yes.
I joined the military because of that fucking commercial. That commercial was so badass, right?
Which you
That's the
no, he
power of
was
media.
yeah, but he was in like a knight's uniform. He was in like
At one
a
point,
yeah, and then after he killed him, it transformed in like the
it
Marine
was
Corps
dressed
uniform, right?
blues. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
It
Yeah, I
was
remember.
that was such a badass commercial where I was like, I want to fucking do that. I'm like fucking 16, 17 years old. I want to go fucking slay dragons. Like that's
And
badass.
you were too skinny for the Marines.
No, I actually talked quite a lot to the Marines, but as soon as I started talking to the Air Force recruiter, I was like, "Fuck the Marines, dog.
Yeah.
Their life fucking sucks." So I was like, "I'm going to the Air Force," and then
Uh,
I went into the Air Force, and here I am in basic training in the Air Force. I'm actually at the range qualifying on M16, and we have to shut down operations, stop operations because we got into fucking whatever FPCon Delta because the Twin Towers got hit by fucking airplanes. And I'm a boy from California. First, fucking, I'm staying at this massive dorm complex in Texas. And I'm like, what the fuck are the Twin Towers? God, I didn't know, you know, life changing environments, right?
yeah.
Um, but, but the media impact, social media within the military can be largely beneficial because it is a mass communication. It can be used as a tool effectively for mass communications for the good and the bad, right? We can push positive information, good things that we're doing, and we can also push the negative things that we're doing, right? If you look at the social media page of a particular air base, you will see that they continuously push the large mission focus abilities of that base as a whole in its defense and fighting force, right? And that's a little bit to show like, hey, look at us. We're kind of awesome, this is our mission, this is what we do. A massive amount of pushing that information out is so that China sees it,
Oh yeah, I
you
agree.
know.
Yeah, and I'm in no way saying that even social media, but media as a whole is just negative. Like you said, the commercials, even and I know
I don't
that.
think it should be void. I don't think the military should be voided of social media, right?
Oh, I
But
agree.
the individuals need to be tightened up on their
Right.
professionalism.
Because like I know the Air Force has a program right now where they're taking active duty influencers, let's say, people that have a large following active duty, and they're providing them time on duty to make advertisements basically. Let's just call them what they are. They're advertisements for the
Yeah.
military.
I
And because
That kind of
they
makes
have these
sense though.
yeah,
That's going to be
and
part of their duty description. When they
exactly.
hit their performance reports, that's going to be part of their performance reports,
And
right?
that's perfectly fine with me because it's 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 got a breadth of reach that standard television commercials nowadays just don't have. You know what I
Yeah, but
mean?
that's different than fucking Sarah and Tom doing their little fucking stupid dance.
I agree. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. The negative aspect of the uncontrolled usage while in uniform
Right.
or on duty, and then the controlled and um, moderated version of it, total night and day. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And that's what I'm getting at. The whole point behind the conversation, the reason I brought up the conversation is it does have the duality to it of the positive and the negative. You
You
know.
know, you know, I say Sarah and Tom as if it's just some low rank individuals. But there are individuals where I come across and it's fucking, you know, gunny shiny boots. And I'm like, what's Gunnery Sergeant doing on fucking TikTok? You know, talking about fucking all this other things that don't apply, you know? But with that, there are a lot of ex-military individuals who have a lot of knowledge of military functions that come through and they post their little videos. Oh, look at these new missiles, Russia, fucking blah 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 blah
Yeah.
blah, right? And it's just
Yeah.
like, hey, that's a really cool breakdown. Like that's a really cool perspective because they actually have knowledge. They have subject matter expertise to put into information
Right.
on on
Right.
on said subject, but it's yeah,
Yeah.
it's not it's the individuals who should be setting the standards who are equally ignoring the standards. And so if
Yes.
they're gonna if
Yeah.
they're gonna ignore the standards for themselves, they're sure as hell not gonna set the standards for their kids. I say kids, the lower ranking tiers.
Yeah. Yeah, and they can't be hypocrites and say, "Don't you do it even though I'm doing it," which,
Sure they can.
is,
Yeah, they can. Absolutely they can.
well, hypocrisy is just plain
It's
awful.
validation. That's validation of leadership though. That's validation of
Yeah.
leadership capabilities. Go be a hypocrite. You can still lead your people. They just won't trust you through your leadership.
Yeah, you won't be a good leader.
Don't
Yeah.
don't think that people trust you in your leadership ability because you're fucking nice to them or because you allow them to ignore standards. That's not
Yeah.
what perpetuates leadership, genuine functional leaderships where people decide this is somebody that I fully trust. Even though he's hard, even though he's a little fucking bipolar and he gets mad sometimes, this is a person who I will follow to war full-heartedly because I
Yeah.
trust him. Because everything he does and says matches consistently.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we've beaten that dead horse.
I like it. Yeah. So yeah. Recap. Right. Like I think social media is an important aspect, and everybody should have free reign and access to it to an extent. Right. But when it comes down to separation of individuals' perspective broadcasted out on the public space with being in uniform, there needs to be a very, 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 very large separation between those two.
Yeah, I agree. And it starts with leadership, and without good leadership and direction, you got to have clear direction. It's, you're never going to get to the root cause of it.
The unfortunate part is though that if leadership as a whole ever decided they were going to crack down on it, there's going to be a lot of pushback. A lot of pushback.
Yeah, but there was a
Be-
lot of pushback when they took beer dispensers out of the dorms as
Dude, that
well.
pissed me off. I couldn't believe that. Like I was like, "What the fuck?"
But I mean,
Like
we
there's no
still
other way for me to get beer. I'm fucking 18 years old.
yeah, we still moved on. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
yeah.
There might be pushback, but it's not going to be the
That's
end of the world.
it's something that will have to happen if it does happen though.
Right. Yeah.
I think eventually it will.
Okay. All right. Well,
Hey, listen, push a like, follow, subscribe if you liked what you heard, and do us a favor, put us a comment, and let us know what you want to hear because that's what we want to talk about. And we've got another episode coming up, so give us follow and hit the notifications so that you can know when our next episode gets published. Maybe it'll be tomorrow. Maybe it'll be next week. Maybe it'll be a month from now. Depends on how Brian's schedule is. Right. No, this is
oh
totally my
yeah,
fault.
yeah. This is all my fault. All right.
Oh,
Thanks,
that's
buddy. I'll
funny.
see you next time.
See you later.